This edition of Whiskey and Wealthtech. I'm your host, Alex Sermon. I'm here today with Eric Lapham from Artius Global. Eric, thank you for joining us today.
No worries, Alex. Thanks for having me.
Eric, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so as you know, I've been in the fintech industry longer than I'd like to admit. I am semi-retired and working with a startup out of Singapore. A couple of my ex colleagues and clients actually at Charles River are the two co-founders, Jackie Pang and Caleb Wu, who you met at the First Rate conference a couple of weeks ago in Dallas. Great guy. And yeah, they asked if I could help them out a little bit, branch out into the US. And, as we'll get into here in a minute, Artius Global is all about regulatory compliance and specifically around shareholding disclosure. So I'm having flashbacks from my early days at Charles River where all we could sell was 2A7 and 40 Act compliance. And I said I'd never wanted to see another compliance demo as long as I live. So it's that part of it's probably been the biggest challenge. But again, great company, great product, two great co-founders. So it's been fun.
Excellent. Well, before we dive in too much to the shareholder disclosure conversation, let's talk about what we're drinking. So you had a suggestion of what to have today. So what is it?
Yeah, so as you know, I'm more of a vodka and beer guy, but I'll drink just about anything over the my 59 years on Earth. So um, you're a big whiskey guy. My wife is a huge bourbon person. Her roommates and best friends are all live in Louisville. We've been to Louisville more times than I can count. So this is one of their favorites. I know it's kind of off the shelf, not high end, but not low end either. I find it kind of tasty, and it's one of the few that you haven't already done a podcast on. So I was glad I could find one that you hadn't already used before. So yeah, Maker's Mark.
Absolutely. Well, and I personally love Maker's Mark. I pretty much always have a bottle on my shelf other than this morning when this is what we're going to be drinking. But I was able to pick up a bottle of their cask strength. So here we're drinking batch number 24-01 at 113 proof. So a little bit stronger than the standard Maker's Mark. But let's dive right in and see how we like it. So
All right.
cheers.
Yeah. Got my Sunday River Maine. Good luck shot glass.
Ooh.
Yeah, very
That's
good.
tasty. But since mine is the cast strength, it packs a bit of a punch to it.
Yeah, tasty. Like I said, it's I'm more of a sipper versus doing shots of whiskey. Though, I'm way past those days, but I find this a very tasty, easy, smooth, easy to drink whiskey.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because I mean, very smooth. A lot of vanilla, a lot of cinnamon for me. So one of the things that makes Maker's Mark unique is they are a wheated bourbon. So that is a bit different than a lot of the bourbons that most people have, where it's in your mash bill you have to have at least 51% corn to be bourbon. Whereas a wheated bourbon, the other 49%, the majority of that is wheat versus many standard bourbons. The majority of that is rye. So it's just a little bit smoother, a little bit creamier mouthfeel. But with this cask strength, they haven't added any water to dilute it after dumping it out of the barrel. And so this is the full-blown impact of what you get right after the dumping process versus what you're drinking with them adding in water to get it to a consistent flavor. So with this cast strength, that's definitely could use a little bit of water. So I like cast strength because I like to just add in a few drops of water. It opens up the palate a little bit more, softens it, but you get more flavors and just more complexity going on than kind of some of your off the shelf bottles. But
Now, good advice. Like I said, you're the expert here when it comes to whiskey, that's for sure. But I'll have to try um, the special one that you're drinking. What was it again?
So this one's the cask strength version. So not sure if you'd be able to get the exact same batch since every batch is different, but usually those cask strength versions are a little bit more unique, a little bit more complex. And the different batches can vary from time to time versus your standard Maker's Mark. You pick up one in Texas, you pick up one in California, and pick up one in Boston, and they're all pretty much going to taste the same, whereas the cask strength could be a bit different. But
Ah, very cool. Learned
now
something
that we
already.
now that we've talked about whiskey, let's dive into Artius Global. So, you mentioned a little bit that you guys handle shareholder disclosure, but really, what is Artius Global, and then and how'd you get associated with a firm that started out of Singapore? So, I mean, you had some ex-clients and colleagues that are there, but what got you working for those folks with Singapore?
Oh, great question. So, a longtime consultant in the industry, Blair Cantor, give him a shout out. We've stayed in touch. We've done a bunch of deals together over the years at Clearwater and Charles River and State Street and most recently SimCorp. So, he was over there. He does a lot of work in Asia Pac. He had been, working with them about on a consulting basis, and they were like, you know, do you know any folks senior sales folks that might be willing to, join us in a startup? And he jokingly mentioned my name, and Jackie and Caleb both said, "Oh, I know Eric." And so, one thing led to another, and it started out as a joke, and then, fast forward a couple months forward, and they roped me into to helping them out, and it's not a lot of time, and it's allowed me to reach out to a lot of old friends. I have a lot of senior COO, CCO, Chief Compliance Officer friends, and a lot of them they're open to it, and things are progressing forward nicely. And some of them just said it's not really on our radar yet. Unfortunately, again, I jokingly said I'm having flashbacks from Charles River with 2A7 and 40 Act compliance 25 some odd years ago, but
Mhm.
the reality is it doesn't become an issue until it becomes an issue and they get a fine. And we sent out a one pager that showed the average US fine last year for shareholding disclosure. I want to say, don't quote me, it was but like $470,000.
Mhm.
So it's not insignificant. And I can tell you for the most part, our sweet spot tends to be, 20, 30, 50, 80, 150 billion AUM, not on the smaller side, although we have clients
Mhm.
that are less than a billion AUM, and then we have clients that are hundreds of billion AUM. So not to pigeonhole us into a certain size or appetite, around AUM. It really
Mhm.
depends on if you do a lot of equity trading. You do, you have your shareholding disclosure requirements are fairly arduous and complex.
Mhm.
That's where we can come in and help you automate it for short money and typically much less than the first fine that might be levied against your firm. So again, some people get it, some people it is very important. It is kind of top of view, and others are like stay in touch, check in with me every few months, which we're doing as well. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's been a lot of fun, and we're making pretty good strides. Again, I've only been doing it since like May or June.
So you mentioned the disclosures are pretty arduous for what these firms are having to do, and if they mess up, don't do it correctly, they're getting these massive fines. What about the process makes it so arduous, and how is Artius Global, helping mitigate that difficulty?
Ah, great question. And the reality is, like any software, it's everybody's doing it manually, scraping websites for the
Mhm.
data. They get the data from Aosphere or another third party that just supplies the data. Their job is to, either a lawyer or, someone on the compliance team, typically a lawyer by trade. So these aren't, um, you know, um, they are pricey resources we're talking about. You can't
Mhm.
really have like a junior person kind of pull all this together. So yeah, fairly senior folks, typically lawyers, legal backgrounds, that spend hours kind of
Mhm.
creating and generating these required reports to the SEC every 30 days. And what we find is it's a manual process, and it may only be costing them 10 or $20,000 a month, but
Mhm.
all they need to do is make one mistake. And the arduous, it's not really all that complex. It's pretty simple math. The rules are pretty straightforward, but
Mhm.
there's just a lot of it. And again, all it takes is one minor mistake, and you get a $300,000 fine or a $3 million fine, and then all of a sudden your CEO is like, "What the heck is shareholding disclosure, and why did I get this fine?" So, we're trying to be preemptive and proactive and get in front of it before it does become a problem for the firms. And like I said, a lot of them are progressing forward. The beautiful part is I came from selling multi-million dollar enterprise deals where the implementation could take 6, 12, 18, 24 months. What I've seen here is Artius Global can be in and out of there start to finish, including bringing the data in. We're agnostic. We don't care if the data comes from Aosphere, any other third party. We're working on a partnership with Bloomberg to supply all the required data. So again, we don't care where the data comes from. We're agnostic. We automate the whole process. And hopefully, when it's set up correctly, it's an hour or two once a month versus 10, 20, 30, 40 hours of a lot of manual tasks. And, these chief compliance officers, these lawyers, they got better things to do than, cranking out these reports every 30 days. It's just, like I said, it's a requirement, but it's also, a thankless job, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, and that's pretty consistent across a lot of things, especially in wealth management, of just there's a lot of manual tasks out there, a lot of people just using Excel. I mean, the risk of human error is really, really high. And so that's why a lot of people are bringing in AI, other automation tools, machine learning to try to mitigate that stuff. And so, for shareholding disclosure, have you found that most of your competition is just doing it manually, or are there other firms that are trying to solve for this problem as well?
There are other firms out there. One of
Mhm.
our big competitors is Fund Apps. They've been at it for a while.
Mhm.
What we're finding, and we have been able to replace a few of them, just to let folks know that I won't go too deep. I never bash my competition, but they're a worthy competitor. They've been at it for a while. I think we're 100% SaaS in the cloud, as you said earlier. I think our
Mhm.
technology is newer and cleaner. The two co-founders say, it's made made by practitioners for practitioners. So again, I'm the furthest thing you can get from a lawyer or a compliance person, but we can show in a demo. It's very intuitive. It's very clean, easy to understand. Again, low maintenance. Once we do the initial setup and get all the data in there, that's probably the hardest part. We do all of that, and then we
Mhm.
hand you the keys and you just run it. So it's clean, it's simple, and typically, maybe we're a little hungrier, um, you know, way past startup mode, but still in ultra growth phase where we'll be a little more aggressive. We have a lot less overhead, number of employees, and that sort of thing. So,
Mhm.
my guess is we can always have a price advantage, which that's that alone opens up a lot of eyes and opens up a lot of doors to take a look at us.
Excellent. I mean, so that's a big differentiator, just having that newer technology, being able to, move a little bit faster, be a bit more kind of proactive with your approach and a bit more flexible. And so we're seeing these trends. You mentioned some numbers on, the amounts of fines that firms are experiencing, just the number of firms that are experiencing these kinds of, mistakes that they're having to rectify all this. So that seems to be a trend of people realizing that this is a problem that they need to solve. But what are some of the other trends that you're seeing in the industry? I know on a lot of our guests on this podcast talk about AI, talk about, personalization of wealth management. But, what are you seeing that you expect firms need to be on the lookout for over the next few years?
Yeah, great question. Being retired, I don't look into my crystal ball as often as I used to, but I think consolidation, trying
Hmm.
to you know, I think, State Street Alpha, BlackRock, Aladdin, SimCorp, Clearwater, a lot of these companies I worked with in the past are trying to go from a best of breed approach to
Hmm.
more consolidated approach. And that's where I see, Artius Global is definitely a best of breed. We're definitely a niche play. And, I personally am talking to some of those firms because I think, they'd be a great acquirer of Artius Global just to add it. If there's 100 functions that you have to do across the front, middle, and back office, if you're a large asset manager or wealth manager,
Hmm.
and you can provide all 100 of those, or you can provide 50 of them, and another vendor can provide the other 50. I think consolidation and data and analytics. You mentioned it with AI is becoming of paramount importance. So, if I think if a vendor can make the data and analytics side of it simple, which we've absolutely done and mastered,
Hmm.
and consolidate and have less systems and less Excel spreadsheets flying around. I think that it is a win-win across the board for both the vendors and the asset managers.
Hmm. And I think that's a trend that I would agree with that I've seen. There has been a lot of consolidation over the last couple of years. And, you and I were both at an event the other week where during a presentation, the number of mergers and acquisitions among, you know, not just banks and RIAs, but among, financial technology firms is enormous. Just within the last year, each of those categories had hundreds of acquisitions and mergers. And so I think that's certainly a trend that's going to continue as we see that. And so it'll be interesting to see who kind of ends up on top of being those, kind of overarching systems and those firms that still want to be best of breed, how they're gonna survive and how they're gonna, make their way kind of in this world. But this is a bit cyclical in my opinion, so we may see it shift back the other way in a few years of, okay,
Could be.
now everybody
I
wants
know it.
their own vendor to do, just their thing.
But I went to your first rate conference. Great, great show is all, quality over quantity, like a lot of very senior people. Very, very happy with first rate. Always good to see. And, I spent a lot of time with your CEO and president, and I think first rate could be a fine acquirer of Artius Global because it just would be another arrow in your quiver, as they say. And I know you're on board with that and the other MDs that we're talking to. So, the partnership's been great. We're making so momentum with mutual clients of first rate. So we'll see where things go. But I agree with you. I think it is cyclical, but the trend now seem to be consolidation. Even if you go from 10 vendors down to eight or six or four, whatever,
Hmm.
across the front, middle, and back office, it just simplifies your life, and it makes the client stickier as well, which is what every software vendor wants. So we'll see what happens.
For sure. So now to my favorite question to tend to ask our guests. So, we've learned a lot about what shareholder disclosure is, what are the challenges that firms are facing, and how Artius Global is helping resolve those challenges. But if you had one thing that you wanted viewers to walk away after listening or watching this episode, what would that thing be?
Yeah, again, we're a niche play. We're a one-trick pony. We do regulatory compliance. We do it very well. Shareholding disclosure, 13F, 13G. We haven't got into the specific, the specific requirements, nor was that the purpose of this call whatsoever. But, people that understand, shareholding disclosure, the compliance officers out there will understand. And, we're very simple. We're very nimble. Our technology is fresh, and we think we can help you out, and it's probably worth a half an hour, 45 minutes of your time to see what's out there and to see, what an implementation would look like, what the cost would really look like, just so you have it. And, if you don't need it today, you might need it tomorrow, you might need it 6 months from now. And again, I'd rather sell it to you proactively than, wait for you to get fined and have it be a bit of a fire drill for both of us. So, simply put, that was the whole idea, is to get, the partnership with First Rate out there, and, Artius Global and who the heck we are, because very strong presence over in Asia Pac where we started and were founded, just starting to make inroads over here in the US.
Well, excellent. Well, thank you, Eric. We appreciate that. And with that, I think that'll be good for today. And I appreciate your time and your insights into shareholder disclosure. And so, for those of you, those firms that are listening that aren't doing something about this today, you might want to start thinking about what the future holds for you. And so, Eric, appreciate you joining us today on Whiskey and Wealth Tech, and looking forward to chatting with you again soon.
Cheers, my friend. Always a pleasure, Alex. Thanks for having
Yeah.
me.